Diseases and Epidemics in the Middle Ages, a journey through time. Welcome to a new journey through time. Before we begin this fascinating exploration of the past, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and activate the bell so you don't miss our content. Thanks to your support, we can continue to bring you extraordinary stories from distant eras. Now let's dive into the Middle Ages and enjoy. Life between the 5th and 15th centuries was incredibly difficult. In an era long before the discovery of penicillin, accepting death as a constant in daily life was common. During the so-called Dark Ages between the 10th and 11th centuries, society began to undergo significant changes. In the Near East and Europe, population growth gathered pace, leading not only to an increase in population but also to increased migration. Many people left the countryside for the cities, which expanded rapidly to accommodate the new masses. However, this urbanization brought with it problems of overcrowding, poverty, and deplorable sanitation. Filth was omnipresent, affecting every strata of medieval society, from rich to poor, from cities to rural villages. Hygiene and public health were non-existent. Houses were often built with white clay floors covered with layers of rushes that were rarely replaced. Underlying layers of these materials, accumulated over years, concealed spit, vomit, urine, and food scraps, creating an ideal environment for disease to thrive. Outside the home, the situation was no better. The streets were filled with open sewers, garbage, excrement, and animal carcasses, much of which was thrown into rivers, poisoning drinking water. These unhealthy environments became a haven for rodents such as rats and mice, carriers of diseases that spread rapidly in the absence of vaccines or effective medical treatments. Infections spread with devastating speed, making disease the most lethal enemy for medieval man. Shingles, also known as ergotism, was one of the most feared diseases of the period. Caused by the ingestion of rye contaminated with a poisonous mold, the condition was named after the Benedictine monk Saint Anthony, who offered aid to sufferers. The disease came in two main forms: chronic, characterized by gangrene, and acute, marked by convulsions. Symptoms included muscle cramps, insomnia, nausea, agitation, and painful sores. Burning sensations in the extremities, due to reduced blood flow, often led to gangrene, which caused the loss of fingers, hands, or feet. Victims could appear to be going mad due to hallucinations and convulsions, a phenomenon some historians associate with the mysterious dancing epidemics recorded between the 14th and 16th centuries. Ergotism episodes occurred in waves and could have devastating consequences. In 1994, an epidemic in France killed 20,000 people, highlighting the enormous impact of the disease. The medieval church played a crucial role in managing these crises, as we will see in the next chapter. In the Middle Ages, disease was often viewed as divine punishment, a view that permeated society and profoundly influenced responses to suffering. Ergotism, also known as Saint Anthony's fire, is a case in point. The church described it as a manifestation of sin, and many associated the symptoms, hallucinations and searing burning, with a sinister portal to hell. The cause was a fungus that contaminated rye grain when it was stored in damp environments. Despite the danger, eating infected grain was often the only alternative to starvation. In some cases, contaminated grain was even fed to prisoners, making their urine acidic, useful in tanning hides. However, ergot poisoning often led to kidney failure and death. Historians debate the impact of ergotism on famous episodes, such as the hallucinations of girls involved in the Salem witch trials or the mass poisoning in Pont Saint-Esprit in the 1550s. Another devastating disease of the Middle Ages was leprosy, feared and called living death. However, many believed that lepers, in their suffering, were close to God and destined for heaven. Leprosy is caused by a bacterium that is transmitted through infected droplets, attacking the lungs and then spreading throughout the body. Symptoms included facial deformities, loss of sensation, and progressive reduction of fingers and toes. Although not directly lethal, leprosy weakened the immune system, making sufferers vulnerable to secondary infections such as diphtheria or tuberculosis. To address this scourge, leprosariums, hospitals dedicated to the sick, were established, often funded by nobles eager to earn spiritual merit. In these places, patients received care, nourishment, and spiritual comfort, finding in suffering an opportunity to atone for sins and secure a place in heaven. The medieval church promoted the idea that disease was linked to sin. By the 10th century, the Fourth Lateran Council required a patient to confess their sins before receiving medical treatment, arguing that only divine forgiveness could cure the disease at its root. This thinking was also echoed in smallpox, which spread to Europe through soldiers returning from the Crusades between the 11th and 15th centuries, causing immense suffering in an era already ravaged by other epidemics. Disease was a constant and devastating threat during the Middle Ages, and many of them cast a dark shadow over history. One of these, smallpox, is now eradicated globally, but it was once a scourge that killed millions. Although its mortality rate was relatively low compared to other diseases, killing about 30% of those infected, and an even higher percentage of newborns, its effects were devastating. Initial symptoms included high fever and vomiting, followed by the development of mouth ulcers and a rash that, over days, developed into fluid-filled blisters. When the blisters dried and fell off, they left disfiguring scars, and in some cases, sufferers lost their eyesight. Smallpox was known by many names, including the spotted monster and the red plague, but it became known as smallpox to distinguish it from syphilis, also called the Great Plague. Syphilis itself was an epidemic scourge, with many historians believing it was introduced to Europe by the voyages of Christopher Columbus. The first documented outbreak occurred during the Siege of Naples in 1493, initially affecting French troops and earning it the name French disease among Italians. Symptoms were horrific: painful green pustules, flesh falling off victims' faces, and unbearable pain when urinating, so much so that metal instruments were used to relieve the symptoms. The disease eventually led to madness and death within months. These diseases, almost inconceivable today, are a powerful reminder of how fortunate we are to live in an age when modern medicine offers solutions and hope that the Middle Ages could not even imagine. Thank you for following this journey into the past. Stay with us for more fascinating episodes that explore the history of humanity.